Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. Tonight we're going to be talking some 1970s heavy metal with one of the bands that I feel like never gets talked about very much. They had some huge numbers that were very influential on a lot of the classic 1980s heavy metal bands that people know and love to no end. Folks like, Dave Mustaine, has praised this band's music. Metallica has covered this band as well as Iron Maiden, and yet I don't feel like anybody's ever gone back and checked them out except for the cover versions. The band I'm talking about is, Budgie. Budgie was from Wales, the city of Cardiff. And yeah, it's one of those names everyone's thinking right now. It's like, oh yeah, I've heard of Budgie. But how many people have actually sat down and checked out their catalog and not just playing the Metallica covers of, some of their songs? It's one of those bands everybody seems to have heard of, but most people never really went and checked out. They were relatively big in their day. They had a fan base, lasted a long time, and put out a lot of albums. And so, what I want to do with this video is just do a relatively brief overview of their 1970s output. I'm not familiar with their entire catalog. I don't know all the little details about Budgie. I'm relatively new to this band. I only started picking up, their albums maybe 4 years ago or so. So a lot of it's still relatively new to me. But I feel like, the band deserves a little bit of attention in modern heavy metal circles, and that's what I'm here to do. So we're going to talk about, their first several albums from the 1970s. I'll play a few clips along the way so you can get a sense of what the band sounded like on a few of these outings. As I mentioned, the band's from Wales and Cardiff, put together by Burke Shelly, who's a vocalist and bassist. He originally recruited Ray Phillips on drums and Tony Burge on guitar. And so they were going with kind of the classic power trio lineup. This earns the band more than a few comparisons to Rush over the years, also because Burke Shelley's voice sounds a bit like Geddy Lee's. Quite frankly, I like him better as a vocalist than Geddy Lee. Yeah, I have always had a bit of trouble getting into Rush to any great level. There's two reasons for that. One is Geddy Lee's voice. It's just has a little bit of that nail on the chalkboard in the back of my brain kind of effect on me. The second reason I have trouble getting into Rush is that I'm not a musician. So when drummers are geeking out over what Neil Peart's doing and guitarists are, freaking over what Alex Lifeson's doing, I'm just kind of sitting there, I feel like the kid standing in the line to see Santa during the Christmas Story movie, where it's just like, I like the Wizard of Oz. I like the Tin Man. I feel like I like music. Guitars are good. I like the drums. I can't appreciate those guys from, a technical standpoint the way musicians can. And, I just don't know that stuff. Anyway, this isn't about me and my issues with Rush. This is about Budgie. So, yeah, they put out their first album in 1971. This is it. Very distinctive cover. Kind of a cool, colorful thing going on there. And I want to check out a clip from the lead track, which is called Guts. So here's the first song from the first Budgie album, 1971, with Guts. there is Budgie with Guts. I love that song. I think it is fantastic. It's the first song I heard by Budgie with Budgie performing it. Yes, of course, I heard the Metallica cover and stuff like that first, but when I actually went to check out Budgie, this was just kind of the first song that randomly popped up in a YouTube feed one day. And just that, real heavy, but a little bit bouncy, a little bit funky, groovy, kind of, bass line, just thumping along. It's got such life and vibrancy to it, though. It's not like a just heavy, bonehead, crushing downer of a song. It's got a real beat to it. Love some, just, the lyrical interplay, the last few lines I played there, I want a lover who's good, a lover who's right. I need a lover who will, not a lover who might. Just, really fantastic stuff. And as soon as I heard that song for the first time, like, okay, I got to get that record. That's just too good. And it is a really good album. It is my favorite of Budgie's 70s output. The guys sound absolutely fantastic together. I love Ray Phillips's drumming. Again, I'm not a drummer. I like The Wizard of Oz, but I really like his beats. They're very lively, very fun. Tony's guitar work fits really nice. Shelly Burke's, not just a good singer, he's a good bass player as well. Everything just kind of comes together really nicely. Now, not every song on here sounds like that. Things you have to keep in mind with Budgie's catalog. First off, they're an early 70s, metal slash hard rock band. And at that time, it was very typical for bands to, have a lot of different influences and play songs in very different styles. Bands would do flat out blues numbers, flat out boogie numbers, and put them all on the same album together. And that was fine. That was the norm. It was almost in a way expected. The idea of having an album that was nothing but heavy metal songs didn't really come along until a bit later. You got like into the later 70s and the new wave of British heavy metal scene. And that's where a lot of those bands started maybe trimming away the quote unquote fat and just, trying to put out headbanger after headbanger after headbanger onto an album. And it wasn't the case 10 years earlier. And so, yeah, you get different stuff on the Budgie album. And a lot of it does show a real sense of humor, which is definitely a core component of Budgie's identity. You get it right away with the name of the band. It's a name that doesn't necessarily make sense to a lot of Americans because Budgie's not a word we use much. A budgie, though, is basically it's a parakeet. All right, it's just a maybe it's a different name for a parakeet in Europe, or it's just UK slang for a parakeet. I don't know. It's what they call parakeets in budgie country. Uh, in America, we call them parakeets. So right away, there was already a disconnect. But yeah, it's a funny name, for this, kind of real heavy, bluesy 70s rock band to name themselves after one of these, cute, tiny little, birds that people keep as pets. And that was kind of the point, Shelley had said, in interviews all the time, he wanted a name that was kind of a juxtaposition. We're playing this, really heavy music, but it's kind of funny to, name the band after this, just, tiny little delicate, bird. The plan apparently was originally to call the band One Ton Budgie, but they eventually figured, you know what, just calling it Budgie, we kind of nailed the joke right there. We don't need the full 1 ton part added to the beginning. So yeah, you get some songs here, with a bit of quirk to them. One of the big standouts on this album, and you can always spot them just from the name, but track 4 is Nude Disintegrating Parachutist Woman. Put all that together in your brain for a second, and there you go. But it's a fun song. Works very well. I want to say, is there one more goofy one on here? I think that's the only one that has a really crazy title. The only other thing you get on here that's, a prelude to what's going to happen in other albums, you do get some of these softer interludes. And I want to play a snippet of one of these because they are a big part of Budgie's sound on this album. So here's a little bit of Everything in My Heart, which is track number 2. So we already heard a little bit of Guts. Yeah, this, great thumping 70s, dinosaur rocker of a tune. Now let's see what came next. Everything in My Heart.
Yes, you are everything. Yes.
Yeah, that just happened. Now, to be clear, it's only about 53 seconds long. It's not a fully developed song at all. It's a soft interlude, and then they come back in with the author, and it's another heavier song. And that was very much meant to be the jokes. Like, we're going to, crush it on a song. Then we're going to kind of play this soft little lilting melody. Then, bam, we're going to hit you with another big heavy song. So, yeah, the band has a sense of humor about what they're doing. Uh, the album is great. It does feature the original version of Crash Course in Brain Surgery, one of the tracks they're better known of, thanks to being covered later on. But there's another version of that song we'll get to in a bit. Anyway, I've talked about this album quite a bit. Well, one last song we should point out, the closer, Homicidal, Suicidal, possibly the heaviest one they ever did. Another great tune. It's a fantastic album. I would definitely recommend it to anybody who's interested in that kind of, early 70s dawn of heavy metal type sound. If you can dig, stuff along the lines of Uriah Heep, early Black Sabbath, Mark II level Deep Purple, all that kind of stuff, and you haven't heard this for some reason, you absolutely are missing a gem of a record. All right, so off to a great start, but we got several more albums to go. Some of these I'll be able to move through a little bit faster for reasons. We shall see. 1972 sees the band come out with their second album. This was the 1970s. Bands made an album every year. You didn't have to wait 4 years in between releases. The second release is called Squawk. Kind of a cool piece of Roger Dean cover art there. Just very simple with the jet fighter with the bird skull on it. So yeah, this was one I was very excited to track down and hear because I loved the self-titled debut so much. This album, everything that is right and hits me just perfectly about the debut doesn't happen on this album. Just to be frank, I'm not a big fan of this album. Other folks I know really dig it. I think I've heard, Aaron over on the Metal Theologian channel talk about enjoying this album quite a bit. Aaron's a smarter guy than me. He knows his music better than me. You should probably listen to his opinion rather than mine. But yeah, this one just it has not connected with me. And again, I'm still relatively new to Budgie. Maybe I'll circle back to it at some point in the future and realize, oh, hey, I'm an idiot. This is fantastic. But here's why this album doesn't quite work for me at this particular point in time. They lose a little bit of the emphasis on the heaviness. There's nothing on here, that has, that real heavy groove to it like Guts did on the debut. What you hear more of is a bit of an emphasis on bluesy rock. Not necessarily bluesy hard rock, more bluesy rock. You have an opening track. The print is really small in this. But yeah, when your first song is called Whiskey River, okay. Yeah, you kind of know exactly where that's going to go. So there's more of an emphasis on that kind of material, which isn't terrible. It's not that I have a strong issue with that material. I just don't think they quite nail it on here. It feels a little flat, a little lifeless compared to the vigor and energy that was on the previous album. The second issue you run into on this album is that those little short 1 minute soft interludes on the first album, here they start to become full-length songs. And it's something, that's you find on lots of Budgie albums here and there. And I just can't get into those tracks. I was okay with it when it was just, a quick clip, kind of catch your breath in between, the real songs from the debut. But then just start doing those more soft, laid back numbers on here. I'm sorry, I'm just out. Doesn't work for me. Favorite song on here, there is one that I think is actually quite strong. It's the closing track, Stranded. And this is, the one track on this album that feels like, yeah, it's a little tighter, a little more focused on, the hard rock inside. It's got a little more energy to it. It's like, okay, that's a pretty cool song right there. If there was more stuff like that on Squawk, I'd like it. But yeah, you have to kind of wait till the very last track. Other things along the line way just don't quite get there. You do have, hints of their humor again. There's a track on here called Hotter, or right, Hot as a Docker's Armpit. Only a band in the UK could come up with that name. And by the way, if I'm using the UK incorrectly, I apologize to the people of Wales. Americans are not good with your geography. I like geography, and even I'm not good with it. So, apology if Wales does somehow doesn't quite count. I'm pretty sure it is, but I should have double checked before I started rambling on this. Anyway, yeah, there's just you have when you have songs titled things like "Young is a Word," that song is just not going to move or rock very well. So yeah, unfortunately, Squawk's a bit of a miss for me. So, moving on from there, the band was on MCA for several albums, and those have been packaged as a box set. So, you get the MCA albums 1973 to 1975. Three disc set. You can find this pretty affordably and pretty easily. There's a nice booklet with it, gives some of the band's bio and such. If you want a decent introduction to this period of Budgie, absolutely for the price. Yeah, I've seen it for less than 20 bucks for three albums with some good stuff on it. Absolutely go for it. So we'll get to album number three in 1973 is this one, another Roger Dean piece of art on Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. Relatively kind of long-winded title there. Yeah, they do tend to have a lot of birds in their artwork, including on this one. And this album's kind of a nice bounce back. For one thing, it features one of their better known tracks. And since it's been a while since we played a clip, let's check out a little bit of one of the band's signature songs, Bread Fan. There you go. Yes. Now, Budgie right away rocking out here on album number three with Bread Fan. I love the way they let that, just opening guitar riff, they repeat it like four times before they have, any other instrumentation come in. They didn't rush it and jump in after doing it twice. No, no, no. They let him, while kind of whittle away on that thing four times in a row. When you've got the hot licks, absolutely make use of them. Fantastic song, gets the album off to a great start. And yeah, it's a much livelier album than Squawk. It's got, plenty of other good tracks on it as well. If I have one complaint about this box set, it's that the print on everything is minuscule. And yeah, so got to read the tracks off the actual box itself. But yes, Bread Fan is great. It's followed up. The second track's again, they'll throw you curveballs. It's a cover of the old blues classic, Baby Please Don't Go. I think a lot of folks have heard AC/DC do this one. But it's a really good rendition of it. It's very upbeat, very snappy. It keeps things rolling along quite nicely here. Uh, then you've got again goofy song titles like "You're the Biggest Thing Since Powdered Milk." All right, there you go. Also, in the grip of a tire fitter's hand. Yep, there you go. Riding My Nightmare is the actually softer song on this one, which strange title for the softer song. It does close on a little bit of a dull note with Parents. That song kind of goes on for a while and just feels like it's, a little bit morose. So yeah, the album maybe lands with a bit of a thud, but there's a lot of good stuff on this one. Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. I think this would be a good point of introduction for people wanting to check out Budgie, just because it shows a pretty good range of what they were capable of. And yeah, maybe those last two songs aren't perfect, but again, it's part of their repertoire. let you know that, yeah, not every song is going to be a Bread fan on here. Moving into 1974. Unfortunately, at this point, Ray Phillips exits the band, which is a shame. I really liked this original lineup. Thought they, had a really good chemistry. But yeah, so they bring in a new drummer named Peter Booch. Really like this picture of the band. If for no other reason, just the sheer size difference between, Burke, who's noted for being, relatively smaller in stature, and here's the new drummer over here, and he literally looks like he's like, twice the size of Burke. So yeah, there's just like, a huge, slant there. They're not making fun of, Burke being shorter or anything, but the new drummer Boot here, he looks, big enough to play 3 drum kits at once. And maybe it's just a weird perspective in the picture or something too. But yeah, I like that picture. Every time I see it, I have to stop and do a double take. It's like, how big is that guy? I don't know. Anybody knows exactly how tall Peter Boot was? Leave it in the comments down below. Based on the perspective in this picture, I'm guessing he's at least 7'6" or something. It's kind of crazy. So what do we get here on album number 4, which is In for the Kill? One of the better pieces of cover art. As you've seen, some of them, they tend to be maybe a little goofy, but this one's pretty sharp looking, I think. Well, this one has some very solid tunes on it too. Like the stuff on side A quite a bit. It starts off with In for the Kill, which is a pretty good track. It's got a good rumble to it. Second is the remake of Crash Course in Brain Surgery. And this one is a little sharper sounding than the original version back on the debut album. So great take on a great tune. The third track, Wondering What Everyone Knows, is one of the softer ones, but this one I think is actually pretty good. There's something about this one, it vibes a little bit better. I think it has, this slightly, again, just the title and the lyrical concept being, a little bit, having that slight, paranoia about it, so that it's soft, but it's like a little bit, it's not necessarily a sad vibe, but it's, got that, slightly, worrisome, paranoid vibe to it, instead of just being this real laid back stuff they do sometimes. So yeah, even this little song here is pretty good. And side A closes with Zoom Club. Longer number, but a very fun one. Very lively. Again, it has kind of an expansive sound. They take their time. They let the song really work through its paces. So the first side of In for the Kill is really good. Side B kind of comes back down to earth a bit for me, at least. On side B, I feel like they really did start to get a little bit more back into the bluesy and maybe slightly funky side of things more consistently. I'm going to play a clip. Well, actually, no, sorry. I'll play a clip of something similar to that from the next album. But yeah, you go through Hammer and Tongs, Running for My Soul, and Living on Your Own. And it's not that they're bad songs, but you don't see the same diversity or liveliness that you did from the tracks on side 1. So a good album overall, but yeah, side B is just a little disappointing for me at this point compared to side A. This could be another case. Maybe in 6 months I put it on, play side B, and was like, holy crap, now those songs are fantastic, and I sound like a moron on the video I made a few months ago. But yeah, still a solid album overall on In for the Kill. Then you get to 1975 with album number 5. 5 years, 5 albums. This one is called Bandelier. Now, there's another change behind the drum kit. I'm guessing Pete Book just didn't fit behind a drum kit, and he had to follow a career swatting down airplanes or something. So yeah, it's still Tony Burge and Burke Shelly, but they've got a new Sticksman, and they got another album cover with, very goofy bird stuff worked into the artwork. Bandelier is an album. It does see the band, I think, sticking, a bit more to some of the bluesy hard rock stuff, and also a little bit more of some of the funkier tones that they get into with time. And again, a little bit of this, I think, was creeping in on side 2 of In for the Kill. Let's hear a clip of it on opening track, Breaking All the Rules, which I think is one of the better tracks on this album.
Excuse
So yeah, not bad so far. The thing that's going to drag this song down a little bit is that it's got another 7 minutes to go. It's a long track to open your album with. And as such, it just kind of gets this, 70s hard rock vibe. You know how certain 70s rock feels like it just kind of keeps rolling without ever building or crescendoing or anything? Breaking All the House Rules kind of does that. Still a pretty good song. I do wish it was a good 2.5 minutes shorter, though. It overstays its welcome by the end a bit. Other songs on here, you have, I Can't See My Feelings. Not sure anybody can, but again, just a fun, goofy title. You also have the closing pair, Napoleon Bona Part 1 and Napoleon Bona Part 2. If I remember right, Part 2 is just more of a shorter kind of, outro piece. But yeah, it's not a bad album, but it almost feels just like a lot of what was on side two of In for the Kill, that they kind of took that direction and stuck with that as, the main thesis for this outing. That wasn't my favorite material in album four, and as such, it doesn't really make album five a standout in the catalog for me either. So yeah, as the MCA era kind of winds down, yeah, I feel like Bandelier is okay. I wouldn't trash the album or anything, but it doesn't quite deliver. Again, it's now feeling like it's a long time since they've had some of that sharper sounds from album number three, or the really heavy groovy stuff from album four. But wait, there's more. In 1976, the band released next album, and their first for, I believe it's A&M. They ended up switching labels because getting Bandelier released in the US, they had to work with a different label, and they actually ended up switching to that label, which was A&M Records. All right. This album is titled If I Were Britain, I'd Waive the Rules. It's a very British sounding album title for a Welsh band. Um, it's a little bit of a head scratcher, but I found out, reading up on the band, it's apparently a play on sort of, Great Britain's, in the days of the Empire, Great Britain ruled the waves. But here they've kind of turned that around on itself. And it was meant to sort of a little bit of a, biting social commentary on apparently the UK's overall zeitgeist in the mid and late 70s was viewed as being somewhat lethargic. The days of the empire were sort of long gone, and a lot of people felt like yeah, they kind of handed the keys over to the United States long ago, and we're just sort of plodding along. So yeah, I guess the idea was, if I were Britain, I'd waive the rules and maybe get my ass in gear a little bit once again. So yeah, it's kind of a fun title. Now, again, I don't have a copy of this record, so can't show this one. I've played this one online a few times, because it was the one I was missing from this run of 70s albums. It starts off pretty well, as I recall, but overall, it doesn't ever feel like it quite gets in gear. I'm looking back over the track list right now, and really the one, excuse me, the one song that stands out as my favorite is the closer, Black Velvet Stallion. This one's, got kind of a weird atmospheric moodiness to it, which is something I don't associate with a lot of the other songs in Budgie's catalog up to this point. So, yeah, I don't have this album, and to be honest, I'm in no hurry to run out and obtain a copy of it. It's not that it's awful, but it just, yeah, feels a bit flat overall. Again, we're on album number 6 in 6 years here, and you've gone through, two different drumming replacements in the past two albums. Yeah, that could wear on folks for sure. It's a weird little coincidence, but I think it's kind of interesting. The two albums that, kind of I like the least out of this run of albums, this one and Squawk. In both cases, the song I like best is the closing song. Just a random quirk of the track listing, I suppose. Anyway, they did finally take a year off from the studio, so album number 7 wouldn't come out until 1978, and it is this one entitled Impeccable. Impeccable spelled, there with the peck, once again, with the goofy bird artwork and goofy bird artwork on the back as well. As a fun side note for folks into a very obscure 70s hard rock, this album was reportedly the inspiration for the Lubbock, Texas band who named themselves Impeccable and released the amazing Live on the Rocks album around 1979. I've talked about that album on other occasions. We won't go into it tonight. So, what do we get with Impeccable? The album starts out extremely well. I like both the first two tracks on it quite a bit. Melt the Ice Away is the opener. And just within like the first 1 minute of this song, it already sounds, livelier and rocks out better than anything did on If I Were Britannia. It follows up really nicely the second track. And again, got to check the track list on here. Don't know, but Love for You and Me um, sounds like it could be one of those softer songs you're kind of a little leery of. But no, this one's actually, quite lively too. You're noticing over these first couple of songs, the production on Impeccable is pretty nice. That it's definitely got a boost in the energy department, which I think they needed pretty badly after the previous album. It's not all uphill. You do have some other strangeness along the way. Track number three, I think. Yeah, All at Sea. This is one of those softer, quieter numbers, and lots of 70s rock bands did these. It's the kind of song where I start to feel like, I just get a little bit late. Maybe, yeah. Is this only gonna be two good songs, and now it's time for Betty Bye? Well, thankfully not. Dish It Up, the track after that, that one gets a little bit more, into the funk vibe. I haven't played a clip representing that, but yeah, Budgie was not afraid of getting, kind of, funky on a lot of their tunes. It's neither good nor bad. Some of those I like, some of those I don't as much, but it's just another dimension to the band's sound. And so there, the rest of the album too is, a bit varied. And so overall, yeah, it took a few spins, but, Impeccable definitely grew on me. Again, if for no other reason, really nice production. It's got some energy to it, and it's got enough good songs, to keep you interested. And none of the songs are really bad. It's just a couple of them do get a little boring. It's something that happens with some of these heavier 70s bands because they were trying different things. You're not always going to like every track on every album. And mountain albums can be the same. Sometimes Leslie West roars and is just, doing an absolutely, skull crushing stomper. Yeah, other times, he's way off in blues territory or doing other stuff. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. At any rate, after Impeccable, you have, again, they take another year off before coming out in 1980 with their Power Supply album. But that is a conversation for another time. It's actually a conversation for another person because I don't know anything about Budgie's 80s catalog whatsoever. I've checked out the 70s catalog in recent years. And again, there's a lot of good stuff here, but you do have to kind of sift around for it. Budgie might be one of those bands for a lot of people that they'd be happy cobbling together their own personal playlist, your own greatest hits of the material that you like, and not working through 7 or 8 albums where there's a handful of tracks you enjoy on each album, but there's others that you don't. At the same time, doing that feels a little bit like cheating, especially with a band like Budgie, where that variety is meant to be a big part of their sound. Yeah, if you put together your greatest hits of Judas Priest, well, most of the songs you leave out are just other Judas Priest sounding songs. You just don't like them as much. But if you only took the rocking tracks from Budgie and you didn't have any of the soft stuff or any of the bluesy stuff or any of the funky stuff, would it really represent the band? I don't think it would. So, yeah, I think this is a band that, at the end of the day, I can definitely dig them, even if I don't dig every, particular style that they tried out. But I have talked enough about Budgie's 1970s catalog, so now let's talk metal in the comments down below. What do you think of their 70s catalog? I'm sure people are going to disagree with me on some of these albums, and that's quite okay. Once again, relatively new to the band, still adjusting to some of these albums. I will probably have different opinions of them after another couple of years of living with these. None of these albums are going anywhere. I still am revisiting them. I'm still noticing things about them. So yeah, maybe in a couple of years from now, Squawk is my favorite, and I finally you'll really get what's happening on Bandelier a bit better. But what do you like about the band right now? Your favorite albums? Do you only like the rocking stuff? Do you enjoy the quirky song titles, or are they just, is it a British humor thing and it just doesn't work for folks in other parts of the world? Yeah, leave a comment below, chat with other folks, let us all know what you think of a very cool, interesting, eclectic band and their catalog from the 1970s in Budgie. With that, everybody take care as always, and until next time, keep banging your head.